So what I'm going to do is we're going to sculpt out an Archangel Micheal out of Sculpting Original. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually make a mold and a cast of that. And then I'm going to cast it out of a Smooth On, a plastic from Smooth On. So sit back and enjoy, guys, as you watch me work on Archangel Micheal, the 3D tumbler build or sculpture. Separated sculpture. It's going to be awesome. Let's get to it. Alright, so we'll go ahead and jump into the actual sculpting portion of the video here, and we're just going to go into a time lapse. Now this is around, like, I'd say maybe 9 time lapse. I do have an armature wire here built out for the arms as well as the angel wings on the back of the body here. So we're going to start off just blocking out the head as well as the shoulders and kind of the pectoral muscles, and then we'll slowly work out the torso before we work in any of the other anatomy. So also putting some lines on the front of the subject here, just so I can get an idea of which direction I would like to face, because I do want that head to be kind of like kind of turned towards, well, our left. So that means that the neck muscles will be kind of tensioned that way, whereas the chest is kind of pointed to the right hand side, like even more so straight forward. So we want to make sure that that sternum as well as the interior ab muscles are facing the correct direction. Kind of building out the forehead as well as the jawline here. I made his jawline extremely prominent in this humanoid or angel that we're sculpting here. Using an X-Acto knife, we can just remove whatever clay we want to. So the clay that we're going to be using for Archangel Micheal is Sculpting Original. Just as a reminder, just in case y'all are wondering throughout this video, a beginner grade Sculpting Original is great for sculpting different things that you know you're going to kind of probably throw away after the fact. We're making a jacket mold of this, and then I'll probably just get rid of it after the fact, but it may sit around in like a Tupperware bin in case I ever want to recast or remold it in a different way. Now just remember that we're making this out of plastic specifically because it needs to go on the Stanley that the customer had chosen. She's ordered multiples of these in the past, and of course I think we have another project here lined up in the near future. That's going to be more of a horror theme instead of more of a Christian oriented thing, but it's going to be very fun overall. This is the tumbler here. I haven't scuffed it up or taken the handles off of it yet, but I will get to that here shortly. And once that's casted out of plastic, it's going to go on this bad boy. Okay. Continuing with the sculpting process here, we're going to go ahead and start removing and blending in some of these lines that we had started with the muscle textures here. You can really see that the actual pectoral muscles is really starting to fill out there, and you can actually see that I didn't make them ultra smooth. I do want them to have a little bit of variation in texture, just because you do have multiple muscles, cords that go across those pectoral muscles. We don't want them to be super flat or super smooth like porcelain. We do want him to have a little bit of texture there. So using different tools here just kind of smooth out the neck muscles. I did make his neck a little bit longer, but I just really wanted to, it not to be overly short, because we do have those wings and his long arms that are coming off the body. So I didn't want his neck to feel like he's like, overly tucking his chin. So I did make sure to bring his head up quite a bit. Once we smooth in some of those facial features there, we can go ahead and begin bringing in the hair. I did decide to make his hair a little bit long, not full shoulder length, but just kind of just medium length. I didn't want him to have short hair either. So just a perfect blend of a little bit of long hair that kind of cascades down the back of his neck is what I'm looking for here. Nice strong jawline here, and then I'll blend in some small eyes here. More so indentions, because this isn't after all a sculpture here, and it will have a sculpted paint job as well. So we're going to go ahead and remove some of the clay, kind of blend in the eye socket, as well as a little small indention for the pupil there. I do work over the face quite a bit until I just really get happy with the overall textures across it. And it's just kind of a slow build up, and remove what you want, add up detail, look at it for a day or so, and then just see where you want to take it from there. Now we're going to go ahead and zoom in quite a bit here, and we're just going to kind of give you a little bit more close up of the details kind of locked in. I'm just trying to get his lips kind of blocked in a little bit. I do want the front lip of his mouth to be a little bit more prominent, a little bit broad, to go along with his jawline here. He's not supposed to be smiling or frowning. He's just supposed to be kind of neutral. And then that way, you know, his face isn't really stealing the show. It's more so just the overall anatomy of the angel itself with the wings and the sword that we're going to be sculpting. Now just remember that I'm going to make that sword creation video separately. It's a little bit of a smaller video, and it follows the relatively same, you know, process as this video itself, where we, you know, go through the design, the sculpting, then we go through latex work, and then we will actually cast it out of plastic before we go into a bronzing paint job. It actually turned out very good, so if you want to check out that video later on down the road, then you can definitely do so. We are going to use a small ball stylist tool here just to kind of get smooth lines in these really small nooks and crannies and different places here. It's really hard to work with a lot of tools when you're working so small, but the little ball stylist tool does really do it does the job for it. Making sure to get the little lip lines as well as the chin there blocked in, and then we can start to work our way down onto the shoulders itself. Even when you make a bust like this for display, it's really cool, and then, you know, you don't have to make the arms or the legs or the wings or anything like that. So maybe later on down the road I'll revisit the subject and we'll just make like a large scale bust of like a really ornate angel. That would be kind of cool. Going to go ahead and add a little bit more meat to his abdomen here, and we're going to go ahead and block in his abs here. We're going to give this bad boy a six-pack, and as you can see, we're also going to go ahead and start blocking in the back. We want to make sure it has a lot of muscle tone. Now, a lot of that will get covered up as we build out the angel wings, but we want to make sure that we can kind of capture as much of those muscle tones as possible. Not only is it fun to sculpt that, but it also allows us to just practice and build our skills, even though we're not going to really use those textures later on in the project. So I do go ahead and make his abs a little bit over prominent here, and then as you kind of remove the interior clay between the ab muscles, then you can kind of flatten those out a little bit, and then it will look all blended here. Also, the V cut down towards his hips, I want to make sure we have a nice prominent muscle tone there, and as well as his little booty butt or buttocks muscles here. So we're going to go ahead and block this in. This really won't be visible in the final form again. And I go ahead and cut some of the armature wires away. I was just having trouble sculpting that and then getting a mind's eye of like the actual sculpted texture of the muscles over his back. So I go ahead and remove those a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and just stick to those two armature wires at the very top. I actually kind of regret that a little bit later because the weight of the wings really made it difficult to kind of stick the lower portions of the wing to the body itself, and it kept wanting to break free. But after doing one or two baking sessions, I was able to remedy that issue, but it did give me a little bit of a headache here. We're going to go ahead and jump in time here. So as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and add the legs and the arms, and then we're going to just expedite through this process here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and blend out his hand here. We are not going to sculpt in toes and fingers in this sculpture. I want it to be very kind of minimalist in a lot of ways. So his hand is designed to be like kind of open palmed, and I do a test fit of where I want the sword to sit over his shoulder, but we'll get to that a little bit later. We are going to go ahead and build out an overall sculpted rock base that he's going to be leaning on here. Now the actual sculpture of this in full sculpt form will have this rock formation, but when we add this to the tumbler for this creation video, we will be removing a lot of this material. So I do go ahead and build it out like a full-on sculpture, but yeah, we're not, this portion of it, a lot of it will not survive the creation process here. And then here we are. I went ahead and also add a piece of fabric across his upper back and across the front of his body, and he's holding that in his left hand, our right view, and it's going to be going around to the back of the sculpture here. Now, just as a kind of combined video here, I do go ahead and sculpt out a small lamb that's going to go along with this sculpture here. I really needed something to balance on the other side of the tumbler to create a good balance so it doesn't always just super tip over easily. And to do that, I decided to sculpt out a lamb. I really just felt like doing one. And of course, lamb in biblical context has a lot of connotations. And I decided to make a lamb just because also on the back side of the rock formation, it would just give a really good kind of like view of something else on the back. But also like the fabric that he is holding in his left hand, it's going to come down and it's going to kind of barely cascade over the back of the lamb here, offering like a sense of protection. And I just thought that would be kind of cool since I incorporated that fabric onto it as well. Now he does have his lower garments as well. But they're not designed really to steal the show. They are designed to show his legs as well as his abdomen, but it is very nice and discreet as far as the overall garments that he's wearing. The garments aren't really designed to steal the show. They're just there to kind of complement the overall sculpture. We're also going to go ahead and give the ears to the lamb here. Yeah, we're going to give them some ears. They give me a little bit of trouble later on. They actually break free twice, and I have to redo them. Actually, when I go to make the actual attach the lamb to the tumbler itself, in the end games, I do actually have to sculpt one from scratch out of DOS air dry clay, and we have to paint that after it's dry. So it did break free multiple times, and I had to repair that. But it's just part of the creation process. Alright guys, so here is the kind of final form of this. We have a lot going on in the background, as you can see, so we're always working on a lot of projects at one time. I do go ahead and put some pads on his arms as well as a leather strap across his upper chest just to give him a little bit more garments there, just a little bit more dimension. And then we can go ahead and really just block in and sculpt in the wings themselves. Now each feather is sculpted individually, so I add them in layers, and then I kind of work my way down towards the lower portion of the wings where they kind of cascade down and over the stone base that he's leaning on. Now as you can see there, a little bit of that fabric is shown right there over his back, and then it kind of disappears over his behind as well as around to the lower portion of the sculpted texture there. So it goes around to his right leg a little bit, but it does cover up all of those back muscles that we sculpted in. Again, it's practice, it's fun, and then of course, if you were to remove a lot of that muscle texture would still be there, which is kind of cool, because we did do multiple bakes on this, so it does have a lot of layers to it. I'm going to go ahead and sculpt these in here. I'm really impressed with the overall sculpted texture over the wings, and I'm very happy with that. Now, because we are doing a latex mold here, or any mold in general, you do have to go ahead and block in the voids there. Now, I do go ahead and keep this as thin as possible. I probably could have made these a little bit thinner, but I did make them overly thick just because I want to try to blend in as many of those little nooks and crannies, because latex does tend to stick into those. And later on in the Dremel working process, after it's casted out of plastic, I do go ahead and remove a lot of these. I do decide to leave one underneath his left arm for extra support, and unless you're looking for it, it's really not noticeable. But I do leave that under there. I made a strategic decision to do that. Here's all those little nooks and crannies blended in here. Anything that's supposed to be removed has little dots impressioned into it, so even if it's later on down the road, I know what I need to remove later. Alright everybody, so just like that, Archangel Micheal is pretty much sculpted out. And just remember that we went in and we filled in certain particular areas, and that way it has a little bit of strength when we go into the latex making process. And I can always Dremel those out depending on what kind of casting medium that I'm using at the particular time. So I can always adjust it and kind of tinker with it from there. I left a lot of the overall kind of like details kind of plain Jane because I may want to detail them individually for particular projects with Dremel after it's casted out of the plastic. So I may Dremel like, the armor in different patterns or different shapes. I can always change the way that the actual garments look across it, change the way his jawline is slightly, and all I gotta do is use a Dremel with an attachment tool to do so. So next up in the process, we're going to actually step out into the workshop shed, art shed, whatever you want to call it, and we are going to go ahead and begin the process of making a latex jacket mold of this sculpture. That way we can get it casted out of plastic. So let's go ahead and jump out there, guys.